Good evening, and thank you for joining Regenerative Agriculture, the Future of Missouri Farming. I'm Lisa Carrico, Program Director for the Missouri Humanities. We are a member-supported organization, and our mission is dedicated to enriching lives and strengthening communities by connecting Missourians with the people, places, and ideas that shape our society. Tonight's presentation kicks off our 2022 signature series, Eat, Think, and Be Merry. Throughout this year, we will host conversations that will explore Missouri's foodways and edible history to celebrate the breadth and depth of Missouri's cultural heritage, natural environment, and the relationship between food and the human experience, how it connects us to each other, to our own past and our identities, and to the world around us. Each month's programming will center around a food-related theme presented through a humanities lens. For this month, we're exploring agriculture in Missouri, its economic importance and legacy, and how it impacts our communities and the community efforts to adapt new practices to create more resilient farming and food systems. Tonight's program is in partnership with the University of Missouri Center for Regenerative Agriculture and the College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources. Our guest presenters are Dr. Kelly Wilson, Assistant Director for the Center of Regenerative Agriculture at the University of Missouri, and two Missouri farmers, Josh Payne and Miranda Dushak. Dr. Wilson is an interdisciplinary researcher whose work focuses on the intersections of identity and food security. She has a PhD in agricultural communications, education, and leadership from Ohio State University, and a master's degree in international agricultural development from the University of California, Davis. Dr. Wilson will discuss why regenerative agriculture is a buzzword in farming these days and what it means for the future of farming right here in Missouri. She will introduce our Missouri farmers, and they will share their stories of why and how they're incorporating regenerative practices on their farms. Prior to the program, we invited registrants to submit questions in advance, many of which have been incorporated into this presentation. Whether you're watching on Zoom or Facebook Live, we invite you to be part of the conversation. We currently have a poll up and running. Feel free to submit your answers there. And in our comment sections, do you have a memory, story, or connection to farming? Feel free to share your connections with us in the comment section of either platform. And as the conversation progresses, we invite you to submit your questions through the Q&A feature, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. If you enjoy this program and would like to learn more about Missouri Humanities, please check us out on social media at Mo Humanities. And we invite you to learn more about our membership program, which includes free books, discounted tickets to special programs, and access to member-only events. Joining is easy. Visit mohumanities.org and click Become a Member. At the conclusion of this program, a link to a program survey will pop up on your screen. Your feedback helps us shape future programs. Without further ado, take it away, Kelly.
Awesome. Well, you can hear me all right? Yep. Great. Well, I want to start with these polls. So please answer these polls as they're coming in. I'm hoping that I can see your responses, but maybe Lisa, you might have the view of the response. So I will stop share for a second. If you want to share the poll. All right. So we got a great range of folks here. The first question we had was, are you a farmer? We actually have a great number of people that are identifying as farmers, which is really exciting. I asked some trivia questions because we're talking about agriculture in the U.S. and some Missouri agriculture. So we'll go to that. But I'm really excited to talk to you today, and I'm really enthusiastic about this opportunity to really talk about regenerative agriculture, and especially to highlight farmers who are doing the practices and coming up with how to do the outcomes that we're starting to associate with regenerative agriculture, which we'll talk more about. So I'm going to share my screen and start off. So to start, So first we asked the question. Well, first I wanted to see how many people were said that they were farmers. We said there was about 30 folks out of 125 or so that said they're farmers. So that's really lovely to hear. Second question was, what U.S. state has the highest number of farms? And the answer is Texas, but Missouri is number 2. Can you believe it? And think about the size difference, right? That's a big thing, right? The fact that Missouri has retained this many farms, it means it's really continued to be this agrarian state. Second question, what percentage of the state of Missouri is farmland? I put some really random numbers, but the answer was 63%. So a ton of Missouri farmland or Missouri acreage is still rangeland, cropland, and forest land. So it's still this major part of Missouri. I'm going to do a very, very brief history of agriculture in Missouri. And a lot of these trends kind of relate to U.S. trends generally, although Missouri has a lot of unique history in agriculture as well. So to start, of course, we have to recognize that we are in land that was lived in and prospered off of for many, many years by several indigenous troops. And I have to point to this awesome native land indigenous mapping project. So you can see all the, like wherever you are in the US, where different peoples lived and have and continue to live in the US. And then in the 19th century, Missouri became this area that was really regarded as a land of promise. And there was all this promise that was focused on farming. It became a state in 1821, and land was dispersed to settlers through grants for war service, National Homestead Act program, which really persuades people to come west, right? We're moving people west and doing so by persuading people to start farming. At this point, as Missouri is becoming a state, already 85% of Missourians were making their living in or subsisting in agriculture. The typical farmer is really an integrated farm, so growing crops and livestock, maybe around 10 acres of corn per year and starting to clear 10 to 15 acres of land per year, and definitely keeping hogs and other livestock like chickens, one of my favorites. Post-Civil War, 1920s, Missouri starts to shift and folks start to move from rural areas to more urban areas. So I really love these two images from this great resource that's comparing all these different states from 1920 to 2019, where they're showing what farming was like in 1920 versus 2019. And in Missouri, the typical farmer was growing crops and livestock, as I said. There were, about 263 farms. The average farm size is 132 acres, and total farm acres across the state is 34.8 million, which is quite large. 2019, we see a very big shift where the number of farms goes down to 95,000. That's a decrease of 63, almost 64%. The average farm size, though, grows incredibly. 120% growth. And then our acreage goes down a little bit, but still remains in a kind of similar vein around the 30 million mark. And these changes occur because of a lot of different things. So first, ag innovations as industrial agriculture starts to become a thing, ag innovations like hybrid seeds, inputs like pesticides, nutrients, that are chemical or nutrients, herbicides, and mechanizations, it increases productivity. And I show this chart to show just like the staggering increase that happens with corn productivity because of these inputs. At the same time, there's a real change in cropping systems. So you're going from these kind of more integrated farms, which are smaller, into more monoculture, very input heavy farms. We see that as farm sizes go up, the number of farms themselves go down. And industrial ag really starts to reorganize how local, regional, and global farming systems work. And we see, as I said, that more people are moving into urban or peri-urban areas or suburban areas. And there's just more people that are less connected with agriculture and food systems as we start to go into 1950s, 1960s, and to today. So that was the briefest history ever. And of course, there's so much more that goes into that. But this comes to kind of agriculture in Missouri today, which is incredible. It really contributes a lot to the U.S. economy, and it's a major part of Missouri's agriculture and economy. You know, we have Missouri representing 27.8 million acres of farmland. We employ over 400,000 people across the state. And as I said before, as the poll showed, we're home to over 95,000 farms, which is the second highest number of farms of any U.S. state, contributing $80 billion to the agriculture industry. And we really have all these different pieces beyond, beyond the different row crops that we are farming. We have these agriculture value-added parts of our system that are really important as well. We are, where I said that we're second highest number of farms in any U.S. state after Texas. We're also ranking in the top 10 for several of like our key U.S. commodities. So we are second when it comes to farms. We're also second ranked in terms of hay production. Our beef and calf farm production is third in the country. Hogs are sixth. So it's really a major player when it comes to a lot of agriculture in the United States. So why regenerative agriculture? What is the point? And that's where we kind of come to today, where we're hearing in the news all the time, what is regenerative agriculture? We're hearing about regenerative agriculture all the time. You see in this report that around 2016, 2017, there's this spike in publications in news using the term regenerative agriculture or regenerative farming. In 2020, regenerative ag is considered the #1 food trend of 2020. And a lot of this is talking about how regenerative agriculture is going to help us mitigate and address climate change. And we're seeing all these, it's beyond farmers, it's beyond food advocates, it's beyond researchers like myself, but we're seeing how private companies are trying to address the impact they have on environments and trying to commit to making actionable changes and co-investing in producer success. We have PepsiCo saying that by the end of last year, they're going to source products from farming using regenerative products on more than 500,000 acres of U.S. farmland. Also in that vein, they're saying they're going to eliminate 3 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. General Mills, they had already enrolled 70,000 acres in their regenerative agriculture pilots. And Cargill advancing regenerative ag practice across 10 million acres of land in North America by 2030, enrolling their farmers in Cargill Regen Connect. So you see all this like massive footprint of acreage of farmland that is trying to think through how to invest in producer success. And you wonder why there is this call for regenerative systems, and there are many, many reasons. Part of it is absolutely we're trying, private companies, amongst others, are trying to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And that has to do with extreme weather events, but beyond that, really trying to think about how we create more resilient food systems. We've seen a loss of topsoil and soil erosion of topsoil occurring at an estimated 1 inch per decade. And then FAO in 2015 classified a third of the world's soil as degraded. And this, again, if you don't care about soil, which I have to by marriage and also by caring about agriculture, is that, we have to care about this if we want to feed people, right? We're seeing a loss of biodiversity, which impacts a lot of things in our lives, but certainly the food that we grow. And just generally, we know that we need more resilient food systems. We want to reduce the food insecurity. In COVID-19, we saw even more of the vulnerability that we have in our food system. And of course, with these private companies coming on board, we're trying to address the market demand. that comes to the question of what is regenerative ag, and I'm not going to go too into it because it's really, there's different definitions, and that's one of the things that we're focused on as a center, is trying to understand how to mobilize this energy. Some talk about practices, some talk about outcomes, some talk about the values, which we can talk about. But what I've come down to after talking to a lot of farmers, a lot of private companies, a lot of NGOs, a lot of researchers, is that we're really thinking about a systems approach to generate agriculture and food systems that are regenerative and catalyze environmental and social prosperity and resilience. So I can, go through, and I'd rather have the farmers talk, but there are some, we can go through all these different practices that are important and potentially for regenerative agriculture. And there's these desired outcomes that are also increasing soil health, sequestering carbon, protecting water quality, enhancing biodiversity, and very importantly is really enhancing the health, vitality, and prosperity of farm families and communities. And then I want to just very quickly address the criticism of regenerative agriculture as well. That, we don't have a clear definition, that people talk about how it's a buzzword, that it's just a passing trend, and that there's overhype, that we need more evidence to show that that the things that we're talking about, the practices and outcomes we're talking about, are actually going to benefit the majority, or the farms and the world, as we're talking about. And of course, something that's very dear to my heart and something I think about a lot is that, like many food and ag movements, and many movements in the US, across the world, that there is a lot of co-opted and long-held knowledge that comes from indigenous groups and people of color, and that the contributions that those populations have made are really important to us, and that we really want to think about that and what we can learn from those things and continue to learn from those things as we go forward. And all that said, I do see a great potential for regenerative agriculture moving beyond just the buzzword. I'll say that first, I think that, and my things, there we go. First, I see it as a great opportunity that we're starting to reckon and have a shift in thinking and creating more support for creating more resilient food systems. I think it's a big tent, so I think there's a lot of opportunity because of the difference in understanding context. I think that having things be more context and outcome driven is really important, because it means that we can think about how in different places we can be farming in different ways, but still trying to regenerate instead of erode the environment and the communities that we live in. And I think it's important to be thinking about things as a systems approach, which I know you'll hear more from both of our farmers today. And of course, very importantly, we have to think about the people who are doing the farming and eating the farming and benefiting from the farming, right? So it's not just about the plants and the animals, which are very important, but it's also about the people who are involved in it. And we want to make sure that we're creating resilient systems for us. And I do think that centering that equity is a really essential part of that. So, there's a lot of work that's needed in this space for regenerative agriculture, and I know that there's people who are interested in getting more into it and would love to continue to deep dive into this topic. But there's a lot of work needed, and it kind of brings us to where we are. So I'm the assistant director for Center for Regenerative Agriculture at the University of Missouri, and we're really working to really collaborate in research, in education and extension, and bring people together across expertise, across experiences, to better understand how we can together create solutions to our global problems of food insecurity and creating more resilient food systems. So with that, I am beyond excited to introduce some amazing farmers, very different farmers doing very different things, but both with exceptional knowledge of agricultural systems in their own context and beyond. And so I'll turn it over first to Josh Payne, who is a farmer in Concordia, Missouri, and a great, I'll let you introduce yourself actually, Josh, but I'm excited to hear from you, and then we'll hear from Miranda Dushak after that.
All right, thanks, Kelly. So my name is Josh Payne. It's interesting, as you were talking about the history of Missouri farming, I realized in some ways, I've lived through a lot of this. I farmed with my 93-year-old grandfather, and he was intimately involved with his farm from the time he was born in 1928, and he has the history of his father and his father. So like my family, we talk about it a lot, and so like the stuff that you were talking about there, but we're also now in this new regenerative ag phase. So we've run the gamut. So yeah, thank you for that good history there. If you'll go to the next slide. I was trying to think about how to process. If you'll go, yeah, there you go. I was trying to think about how to process like farming and what we do. Go back to the other picture there, Kelly. So like this is the view of our farm, and if you look here, this is like literally out the window of our house. And there's so much complexity. There's corn that was grazed in the background there. There's an annual, I think that's wheat back over there. There's summer annual forages. And this is a really complex, diverse system. And I was trying to figure out how do we do this? And the thing, I heard a lady talk probably a couple of months ago, and the phrase has just been stuck in my head for a while. And the phrase is like we want to give our animals, our cows, a life worth living. When I realized, man, that's exactly what we're doing here. I used to be a teacher, and now I farm because it's a life worth living. But if you look at this picture, this place hasn't always been a life worth living for me. It was actually a place I dreaded coming. And so I'll tell a little bit of that story. If you go to the next page. First of all, my name's Josh Payne. You see my family on the left. There's Lauren and Raina and Ella and Jacob. I did that in the wrong order. Just go by height, not by order there. And then on the right, you see my sister dressing up as what she wants to be when she grows up day at school, a teacher. And then we sell under the name of Rusted Plowshare. We've just started this. The idea comes from the book of Isaiah. It's the idea that they will turn their swords into plowshares. They will turn their pruning hooks or their spears into pruning hooks. And we want to take instruments of destruction, these old things that used to destroy land, like for us, herbicides and tillage, and turn them into tools that bring forth life. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rethink our food, and we're trying to regrow our land. Is how we're trying to talk about that. And it's exciting for me because my sister Jordan, now we have 300 acres that we control here, and we're now up to 2 full-time jobs, which is back about to that range of what you were talking about earlier, Kelly, of about 150 acres, 130. Our goal is to get 1 full-time job for every 50 acres of land that we currently steward. So if you go to the next one, please. We'll talk about, so in our past, we were just straight corn and soy. This is a good, clean looking field. And it's like people envied what we did oftentimes. If you go to the next one, like the result of that ended up with 6 months of the year looking like this. Just bare fields with very little stubble, very little residue, and very little soil life. So if you go to the next one, we actually made a really big transition. And so this is when I started to realize that farming could be something worth doing, was when we got into cover crops. Here's my grandfather. He's 93. He's standing, or at this point, I think he's like 86. But he's standing in a field of 5-foot tall cereal rye that we're getting ready to plant our soybeans into. And it is the strangest thing that he ever imagined. Interestingly, this crop ended up being about 15 bushels better, which is like 40% better than the conventionally grown crops that we had done. If you go to the next one. So in our past, we spent a lot of time, like we would plant instead of into a bare field. This is us planting soybeans, but cornfields looked often like this too. So we would plant our corn and soy into this. It provided cover for the soil. It reduced herbicide, it reduced pesticides, and it reduced fertilizer, and at the same time, clean water. So this is a pretty good example of like what big regenerative ag could look like. Unfortunately, I found out a couple years ago that I was allergic to herbicides, which meant that we had to stop using them. They swell my throat shut. I get an anaphylactic response to that. If you go to the next one, so our solution to this is to convert an entirely clean, like beautifully manicured row crop field into a very messy sheep and cattle pasture. So this here, so what we try to do for our animals is we grow sheep and beef and we sell them direct, and we also sell our sheep wholesale, is we try to give them a life worth living. So here, this is a perennial pasture. This has grass on the bottom that we went in, used a regenerative practice, and we drilled like warm season annuals into this. You see that we have a net in between here, so we're moving our sheep like daily at this point. And this is exactly what the sheep need to eat. So our cows need to eat so that they can like have a good life and eventually produce high quality, good tasting meat. So if you go to the next one. So then you see here's our cows. They're grazing. This is what they graze in the winter. This is a summer, annual, winter stockpile. And if you want to get into some of these details, we can talk about this later. But this has all the protein and all the energy that they need to maintain condition and actually to gain weight over the winter, which is really hard to do. So if you go to the next one. So that's what we try to do. We try to produce animals. We try to grow animals that have lives worth living. And then what I've realized is, like, this is what we're trying to do for our kids too. So we have about 30 acres of a chestnut alley cropping system. This is my daughter, Ella. She likes to, please don't tell anybody this. She likes to drive the four-wheeler around and pick up chestnuts. And so we close our eyes and pretend she doesn't do it. But so this is her looking up at a chestnut tree that's getting ready to drop the chestnuts. And in the background, you see like this is an area that has been grazed by sheep. And so what we hope here is that in this area, according to the University of Missouri agroforestry system, in this area, we should have enough to produce about 8 full-time jobs on these 30 acres. So that if you throw our sheep in there and you throw chestnuts in there and you throw a couple people gardening in between here, we're hoping to be up around the 12 to 15 jobs like on our 300 acres. So if you go to the next page, I'll show you how we're trying to do that. So in between these, there's an alley cropping system. We have the rows of chestnuts. In between, we have forage on the top side of this. On the bottom side of this, we grow pumpkins. Last year, we grew sweet corn. Sometimes we just graze it. But so we're always trying to figure out how we can stack enterprises and add value to that. If anybody wants to grow a market garden in between some chestnut trees, about 50 minutes from Kansas City, just hit me up. We can figure it out. Go to the next page. You see here, this is what our sheep grazed this last summer. You see corn that was grown. This is a heirloom variety of corn. You see sunflowers. You see sugar beets underneath there. You see some soybeans. And this allowed our animals like to finish really well. It marbled well. They were tender and turned out really nice. If you go to the next one. Yeah, those are Chinese chestnuts. So this is kind of what our life looks like. Me and my daughters and my son, we go out and we move sheep. This is a summer annual mix that our animals graze in the summer. I'm in the mean dad who makes my daughters move sheep with him every day. If you go to the next page, you see they actually have their own little business. This is kind of a fun thing. We're hoping to help them learn how to run a business. Any of the lambs that have, or the ewes that have triplets, our kids get to keep them, they get to bottle feed them, and they get to make all the money off that. So they're learning off that already. This is my wife, Lauren. I'm helping bottle feed. If you go to the next page. This is where, even in the winter, it doesn't stop. We were up checking sheep a couple weeks ago when it was snowing, and it just had to be done because we had extra help. My sister was off school, the kids were off school, we go to work. So this is just us moving sheep and getting ready to work on the farm and snow. Go to the next page, please. And then our other favorite thing, my wife loves to coordinate parties. And so since we're so close to Kansas City, we love to have people out to the farm. This is a group who actually helped us plant 500 chestnut trees in a day. My wife calls it Tom Sawyering. I don't understand what that means. But so yeah, they came out, we had a big bonfire for them. And just like, so we enjoy these kind of things. We're hoping to host more people. We feel like we have a beautiful place and a life that's worth living. And at the same time, that we want to be able to share that with other people. So go to the next slide. And so this is kind of how I would describe our farm. Our farm is a messy, complex, diverse life worth living. Here you see a chestnut tree, and you see winter annual forages, and you see sheep in the background that we're moving in. It is a big, messy system that is worth every second of it. So this is new to me. We're just starting to direct market. So yeah, we do a lot of, like, we post some. We probably should post more. So if you please get a chance, check us out on Facebook. We do a bunch of. I talk about my grandpa a lot. We tell stories, history of stories. I vet them by him first, so we don't get in trouble. So yeah, so thank you. It's I'll be looking forward to answering some of your questions later.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I'm excited for folks to be able to connect with you and ask questions. And so we'll hold all the questions for Josh until the end when we talk to both the farmers together. But I'm also really excited to learn from a different farmer who is in a very different situation, and she has a broad range of agriculture expertise as well. She's not only the owner of a farm, an urban farm, an urban flower farm, Urban Buzz, but she also is a regional small farm specialist and East Central region coordinator of the Innovative Smart Farmers Outreach Program, and she's serving as on the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education SARE Administrative Council, and she's co-owning this amazing farm. So I'm excited for Miranda Dushak to join us today and to hear from you from this other perspective.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Kelly Robin, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much, Lisa and Josh. I really appreciate being included, and I thank everyone for spending their evening with us. Am I able to advance my slides?
I'll do it for you if that's okay. Just let me know when to go.
Sure, please go. Yeah, I wanted to say that I do have sort of a wide breadth of farming and farming experience, and have been running this business with Mima Davis, who you see here in this photo. She's my farming partner. We've been doing that for 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary on Groundhog Day, February 2nd. And we are an urban cut flower farm, okay, in St. Louis City. If anyone's here familiar with St. Louis City intimately, we're by St. Mary's High School on South Grand. We're by Ted Drew's frozen custard on South Grand. We are a highly, what do we call it now? Working class, right? Highly racially and ethnically diverse neighborhood in St. Louis. And the farm, you can advance the slide. The farm dates, the records we have date from 1870, okay? And the farm changed hands, right? And the Held family had it for 3 generations, and they stopped farming in the mid-90s. And what happened was the neighborhood grew up around this farm. So the farm shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and the neighborhood changed significantly. And so the farm was, by the time we bought it in February 2012, the property was condemned and vandalized and hadn't been in production for about, I don't know, almost 10 years. But a lot of people looked at this property, but my business partner, Mima Davis, and I decided, let's go for it. Okay, so we grow 80 different varieties of cut flowers annually. We sell to farmers market, florists, weddings, events. We do workshops and speaking engagements. So next slide, please. We're dynamic women, and we have a dynamic business model, but it all starts with, you know, for us, what is regenerative agriculture, or sustainable agriculture? We are soil-based. We are focused on living our best life, as Josh so well said. There is a spiritual, indeed religious component to what motivates us to live this type of lifestyle. And I'd say when I came to small scale farming, it was because I was concerned about the world and how I was going to become a woman in this world, and how can I address the things I care about: the environment, right? Labor, health, the treatment of farm animals, right? Carbon footprint. How can I do all that? And small scale sustainable farming kept coming up to me. So when I started, I was food-based, but Meme is a flower farmer, and a big part of farming is financial sustainability, and on our 1 acre land, right? So we bought the farm. Please, next slide. I think there's some photos of it. Well, that's our products. Oh, I wish I could advance. Oh, there's our product. Oh, here it is, the farmstead, right? That's a photo from 1904, right? So where was I? My goodness, I'm just looking at the photos.
Yeah, you bought your farm. I'm like riveted with this story.
Okay,
You bought the farm.
Thank you. Yeah, so we bought the farm in the height of the Great Recession. We decided we're not going to take out loans to do this because look, y'all, like being a small scale farmer and working for Lincoln University Cooperative Extension, I love it. I love Lincoln. We're a small school. We're doing great things. But neither of these businesses are lucrative. So you have to have a real mission behind it. And I think that is what regenerative agriculture is really about, is how can we have the best living system and live our best lives. Right, I'm going to kind of leave it at that. Here are some of our gorgeous products. There was a slide that said, don't compete with the imports. That's something that's really big. You know, the majority of cut flowers used in the United States, 80% of them are imported. The rest, the 20% that are left come from California. So we are in a niche market, and the cut flower industry is pretty dirty in terms of chemicals and labor practices and the carbon footprint of shipping. A lot of it's shipped by air. So you can really make a good impact with purchasing local, well-raised flowers. So I'm wondering about time. Should I keep going or?
I think you have a few minutes.
Oh, great. I'll keep going.
I wanted to show some of these beautiful images you have.
Yeah, that's the greenhouse when we bought it. The greenhouse dates from like the 1950s. It's an old Lord and Burnham glass greenhouse. It's a dinosaur. You know, look, when we bought this property, like the mosque on the corner was looking at buying it to level it and have parking, okay, for their high, like no one wanted this place. And it's like a little slice of paradise and a lot of work. But
and Miranda, do you want to talk a little bit about, like, beyond, you also came from, you have a lot of agriculture background, but also you're a beekeeper by family, right? So that is a part of what what you care about, it seems like. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, bees. Oh my goodness, bees are wonderful, wonderful things. Yeah, I'm a 4th generation beekeeper. Just grew up around it. Duschack's honey, how sweet it is, was my parents' hobby bee business. You know, in the bee business, they say you're not in the bee business until you're running 100 hives. So that's a lot of hives. But yeah, and grew up that way. So I just, as an adult, decided to keep doing it. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. Right now, I'm taking a break from the bees. I have young children. That's kind of a hard mix. But
yeah,
bees are
right.
Great. One thing I would like,
I think it's part of like what you, go ahead, please go ahead.
Oh yes, one thing I would like is to address, I think her name was Adriana's question about like community gardens and urban farming. So that's what I do a lot with Lincoln University. And we're in Kansas City, St. Louis, Cape Girardeau, Jefferson City. We service these areas with farm outreach workers. And these are people who come out into the field, meet with beginning farmers, veteran farmers, disabled farmers, women farmers, farmers of color, I mean, you name it, and help you kind of get on the right path with your dream. And I work a lot with urban farmers. And I just want to clarify the definition of a farm for the United States Department of Agriculture uses producing $1,000 or more of agricultural product annually. Okay. And that doesn't need to be sold. You don't need to sell that 1,000, but you should keep records to prove that you are in fact doing that, and therefore getting like ag exemptions or whatever. But so I don't want to say the bar is low, but when we think about farming, you know, there's this wide breadth. And one of the questions in the Q&A was asking about how many farms are owned by people of color or women, things like that. So the United States Department of Agriculture Ag Census for 2017, if you dig into it, you can find a lot of those answers. So yeah, great. We're here, we're on, Urban Buds is on Instagram. We're technically on Facebook, but I never look at it. The best way, if you have a question for me, is really like call me or email me. I am a resource professional paid for by the state of Missouri and your hard-earned tax dollars. So I can at least give you a little sometime, you know. So I'm here.
Yeah.
And thank you.
And Miranda is such an amazing resource, and we'll definitely be providing all of us as resources post this. But I really appreciate the idea and, you know, thinking about what is farming, what is a farm, and these different ideas that come into that. And so it's cool to have these very different type of farms to contend with as well. And so I'm excited to have our discussion and answer some questions from y'all. And of course, the conversation will continue. And so please don't think of this as a stopping point. So Lisa, do you have questions for us? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so
I
much.
just want to keep our flowers up because how beautiful.
I agree. Let's keep the flowers up for this conversation. So I think a question that before we open this up to the wealth of questions we've received, for each of you, how can consumers and non-farmers engage in agriculture? So, you know, in other words, what can Missourians do to the farmers? What can consumers do to support producers like you? So whoever wants to take that question, go for it.
Miranda or Josh, I'd love for one of you to answer to start.
I mean, I'll state the obvious. You can buy our stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really good reason. Like, I can make a great sales pitch for our meat, but I think there's a really good reason to buy stuff that you know how it was raised. And like you know, there's lots of different concerns that people have there. So I think definitely like spending your money. I think also like to get away from just where you spend your money. I think like engaging in the conversation on a larger level through State University of Missouri, like through the political realm, there's massive forces that are at work on like the big ag scale. And so just other voices that say this matters to us can really change some of those big wheels that are in motion.
Awesome. Miranda, do you have perspective on this? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in the St. Louis area, you can look for known and grown farmers. You know, there are sort of certifying labels that may help, like USDA certified organic, of course, is one. Also is real organic is a certified. So is this known and grown label that's spearheaded by the Missouri Coalition for the Environment, and there's an auditing process. So, you know, there's tools like that, but you know, going to farms, participating in agritourism. When you go to Walt Disney World Resort and you go to Epcot, go on Living with the Land ride, okay? It's really interesting, even though it's not soil-based, which, you know, I am soil-based, but, you know, just keep thinking about it and just have an awareness that, yeah, agriculture is everywhere. It's the mint in our toothpaste. It's the clothes we're wearing. It's the floor we're sitting on. It's the rug. I mean, it's just integral to our lives. So the more awareness that you have of that, then you want to support small farmers, and rather Start your own
Yes.
garden. Come on, y'all, you can do container. You can do just a little bit in your backyard. You can join a community garden.
Yeah, it's so exciting to talk to farmers about that. And there's a lot of ways to learn about the local products that exist, local farms that exist in the U.S., but also just to learn about the ways that our farming systems and our food and agriculture systems, which are entirely intertwined, the way that we produce and the way that we disseminate food they're very intertwined, and so it's important to learn about that. And so I shared our website to learn about more about regenerative agriculture practices and outcomes from different perspectives, but we'll definitely be sharing more resources as well. And yeah, absolutely, try and get to know the farms around your area and where the food is coming from. It's a really exciting thing to do. I mean, it's fun too, because food is the best part of any day. Let's be honest. So are flowers, to be honest.
All right, I have one more question for you before opening it up. I have to ask the question, what role do you feel the humanities and conversations like this play in helping us better think about the complexities and the future of agriculture?
Farmers. Do you want to start?
Kelly, do you want to start that?
No, I want them to start.
I'll jump out there again. Okay, so I'll just say my life has been ruined by Wendell Berry. Absolutely. It is like his concept of small towns. And I love the fiction parts of this more than the nonfiction. But like his concepts of small town has made me like stop and reevaluate everything that we do, from participating in a big commodity driven system to what we eat, to how we buy things, to do I charge my neighbors to help? And so, I mean, if reading books and participating in conversations has messed my life up that much, I think it has a huge role. I think the hard thing is how do we engage that conversation? A lot of the times when I go to farming conventions, it's all X's and O's. I used to be a basketball coach. It's all numbers. It's all practices. It's very practical, and very little of it gets to the heart. And so, like, how do you engage the softer side of farming? I think it's like that's a really important question to get to, because that's the next driver, I think, of change for large acres of farming.
Wonderful answer. Miranda, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah, Wendell Berry, right? I know. Or Anne of Green Gables, like for me, perhaps some, or Little House on the Prairie, but what comes up in my mind is a sort of a paraphrase quote from Fyodor Dostoevsky, right? Love in reality is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams. And I'd say that's something I really learned with farming is, 10 years ago, it was mission focused, right? Like it was dumping all of my money in from my job, right? Working all the time. And not really understanding the finances. And now 10 years into it, a sustainable practice for me is I signed up for continuing education classes through St. Louis Community College. And I'm taking accounting boot camps 1, 2, and 3. And I'm at the point where I am like, I better understand these tax documents, because you have to outsource it if you don't. And that's the stuff Wendell Berry does not talk about, is how do you synchronize Square and QuickBooks? So I think there's, it's wonderful to come to these things and feel what I call that old time religion of farming and like, when you smell a horse or you turn over the compost pile, my goodness, it's the best.
Can I throw one more out there? My favorite farming quote comes from John Steinbeck of Mice and Men. It's Robert Burns, actually, I think, as you said it originally, but it's even the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And man, I think about that every day because I have a plan and it's going to work, and it often goes awry. Like that's how I ended up with sheep. So, I just I talk to my kids a lot about these things, and a lot of it's, it's a very humanities-based concept. It's like if we don't have the mental constructs and the ideological constructs to be able to deal with the problems that come up, to be able to deal with these misfortunes and the things that like often go awry, like we often become discouraged and quit. And I see it. I think my grandpa, again, he tried no-till farming in 1988 is what he tells me. He had a bad year, never did it again because the ideological construct wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah. Such poets. But I'm blown away by both of what you're saying. I think that there's so much to read and there's so many people to draw from. But I really, I think that when we think about farms, we think about the antiquated system, but it's very, very much, agriculture is very, very much needed and very much alive. And we need to invest in our current agriculture and not just think about those, what we like the ideological things of the farm, because today could be that ideology. That's not the right word, but yeah, it could be that current day, excitement around agriculture and food. And I think that's really important to invest in, from every angle, from policy, from consumers, from farmers, and from researchers and all these different stakeholders. I think it's really important that we start thinking about agriculture as the real thing it is today, because it is, and we need to be continuing to grow food, and we need to be able to make that food part of our culture and lives, which it is. But we need it to put it in the forefront, I think.
Well, Kelly, can I throw one? Sorry, I keep jumping in, Miranda. Like just butt in my way. So like the concept of food is interesting to me. So because like for me, growing corn and soy, it was commodities. I was growing nickels and dimes. I was growing money. It wasn't something that we ate, or it was like there was no thought. So if there's no thought about the things that we're growing as food, it doesn't matter what we do or what we put on them or how we treat the soil that they're grown in, because it's how do we get the most nickels and dimes. Man, since we've started producing food, like real food that we eat, like on our farm, that we hope to sell to other people, we have to stop and think about that because we care about the people that we sell to. We care about what's in the soil. We want them to have nutrient dense food. We want them to have, we want our animals to have healthy forage so they can taste good for people and they can be healthy. So it's like, I think a focus on food is super important for the future conversation of this.
Thank you so much, everybody. Let's see, I'm going to ask some maybe specific questions here from our audience. I am with Miss United States Agriculture program, and we have a ton of girls that are looking for farms that they can go and visit. Do either one of you allow farm visits? All right, there's your answer, Amanda. Reach out to Josh and Miranda, and they'd love to show off their farms. There is a question about...
Reach out to us as well. We'll definitely help you connect with folks. That is awesome. Awesome to hear.
Josh, there's a question, kind of this generational question of how did your grandparent take to this idea of using regenerative agriculture when you initiated it?
Yeah, I can't use those words here. No, it was a struggle. I wanted to plant these chestnut trees back here, and I had 3 different EQIP grants ready to be signed to put these trees in, and he nixed everyone instead. It's a whole year process to go through this. So finally, he eventually says, like his phrase, this is my Facebook post this week. His phrase is, they'll still make bulldozers in 30 years. You can always doze the trees out. So he's somewhat on board, but it has been really hard. It just comes back to identity. That's what he did his whole life, and me wanting to change everything, and him doing that with him. It's been hard. We talk about covenant a lot. The idea that we're not here contractually, we're here as family. We're here and we're going to be here to stay. So I think that gets us through some of those harder issues.
Absolutely. Let's see. Miranda, this question's for you. Can you talk a little bit about the specialty crop block grant that Urban Buds was just awarded for locally grown flowers?
Sure, yes, thank you for that question. Urban Buds has availed ourselves of the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. It's a USDA pass-through grant administered by the Missouri Department of Agriculture. It's currently open right now, and Ms. Susan Bennett is the contact who helps coordinate that program. But the Specialty Crop Block Grant, we have our third one is about, it's all about season extension and reintroducing crops to Missouri. So St. Louis, Kirkwood, Sunset Hills, Florissant had these big greenhouses. And it was a real area of rose production and heritage mums. And so when we say in that slide that I passed over because of time, don't compete with the imports. Well, roses are very challenging to compete with the imports. However, we have cultivated a customer base, and there are these really beautiful heirloom rose varieties right now. And I think we can sell them. I think we could learn about it. It's hard to grow roses or organically, or reduce pesticide, reduce tillage in Missouri. So the Specialty Crop Block Grant will help offset the cost of that experimentation for us. We may fail. We will have failures for sure along the way. And I guess, I hope that answers the question. I want to say one thing about the Specialty Crop Block Grant. They usually go to universities, but they absolutely can go to farmers. Grants are not free. There's always a ton of work with them, including quarterly and annual reporting. And then lastly, you have to have the money up front. It's a reimbursement grant. So they don't give you that money to do your project, right? You have to buy whatever you're doing and submit a receipt, and then you get the money back. So keep that in mind.
All right, Kelly, I think this question might be for you. There's a couple of people that are asking about kind of monoculture farms, larger farms versus smaller farms. How do smaller farms fit in with like the huge corporate farms? Can we close this gap? What does that look like for the future?
Oh boy. It's a big question. There's absolutely a role for all scales of farming. I think that a big important thing is to try and get more farms interested in trying to regenerate our soil and not be depleting the soil systems that we have. And I think that it's important to be contending with the historical differences in land opportunities that have existed in the U.S. And I don't know exactly how much more to say about that, Ray, at this point, because it's a whole different lecture, but not lecture, but presentation. But Miranda and Josh have things to say.
Okay, yeah, I'd say even just the fact that we're here talking about regenerative agriculture and your statistics about Carhill and whatever, the corporations look at the small scale folks, the people in the sustainability regenerative agriculture world, because there is power behind that. People want to support that. So they monetize it, right? By kind of co-opting the idea sometimes. So, we are the vanguard, and we are changing that mindset. And I think ultimately, like, the writing's on the wall. Our climate is changing, and it's going to continue to change. And things are different, and we're going to have to adapt, and there's going to be hard times coming. And the more small scale resilient, the more spread out our food system is, the more people who have this knowledge base and are stewarding the land, the more we'll be resilient as a culture and frankly as a species.
Yeah, and so like the more people who are processing like that, right? That's the thing that keeps coming to my mind. And I was talking to Lisa about this the other day. Is I think for me it comes down to the concept of imagination, and I think that includes like big farmers as well. And I think like on my part, I think I often separate big farmers and small farmers and think, man, they do something totally opposite. Whereas instead, like I think if we have the imagination, and if they can start to get the imagination to see things in a different way, I think then those worlds can start to intersect. Like I was talking to a friend over here, he wants to pick up another 1,000 acres because in our neck of the woods, it's like if you have 1,000 acres, your kids can come back and farm, right? I was like, but that's not true. You don't have you don't have to just keep picking up more land. You could also think smaller. You could plant chestnut trees on 10 acres. You could plant some elderberries over here. You could start to get into some of these direct marketing niches as well, or you could host somebody else who really wants to do that. And so it's like opening up like who we think of as big and small farmers, and allowing that imagination to kind of bleed over, I think can really benefit our soils and our water and all the things that regenerative agriculture promises to do.
Right. I want to piggyback on that a little bit, is also like showing that the kids can make money off of this. You know, for me, when I think about August or Adam, so August is my 5.5-year-old, Adam is 6 months. And I just think like to be able to hold on to Urban Buds, right? 10 years. Let's see if we can make it another 10 years to 20 years. Let's see if that could be an option for them. I mean, that's huge, right? So that passing on the generation, I see in the chat that there's some Century Farms here. To me, that is such a proof of like sustainability. Like you show your kids and your family and interested folks that this is, you can make some money, you can live a good life this way. And I also think that in terms of shifting the mindset, man, I mean, it's the times we're living in, but like influencers, I mean it, right? Like who is touting this, right? So like Chris Pratt keeps hogs. I'm kind of Guardians of the Galaxy gal, you know, or right.
I'm a Parks and Rec gal, so I get it.
Okay, there you go. So I mean, there's other examples of this, but in St. Louis, at least, we're working. You know, they're especially getting like racial minorities interested, people of color interested in youth. That crossover between like film and agriculture is one of the projects I'm working on, which is sort of interesting.
Cool.
So yeah. Oh, it's 7:33. Oh, geez.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'm sorry to have passed it on to y'all, but those were great answers. And I think a big part of it is just coming to terms with, you know, what we want in our food systems and in our environment and in our social world. All these things are interconnected. And I think that there's room for a lot of things, but the biggest thing is trying to see how they are interconnected and how we can try and create those systems that are resilient and dynamic and fun, you know, like the lives we want to live. I love that.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight and all these great comments and chat throughout the night. Special thanks to our guest presenters, Kelly, Josh, and Miranda. I thank you for your expertise and for sharing your story tonight. I know I really enjoyed learning more about regenerative agriculture and what it means for Missouri. This presentation, a lot of people have been asking, will be available to view later. It'll be up on our website. It'll be up on our YouTube channel. It's been live fed to our Facebook. So feel free to share, engage on this topic. We didn't have enough. 1 hour is not enough time for this conversation by any means. But we will also send out an email to everybody that registered, everybody that viewed tonight. We will connect you to Miranda, Josh, and Kelly and some resources. And hopefully there will be a further deeper dive into this conversation hosted by Kelly. And a link to the program survey will show up in your browser at the conclusion of the webinar. So if you'd like to learn more about our programs or consider becoming a member of Missouri Humanities, please visit mohumanities.org. I hope tonight's program has inspired curiosity. I know I want to go read some Wendell Berry after tonight, but as we think about the future of farming and how it impacts our community, this concludes our program for tonight. Good night, everyone.